My name's Bello. I'm a mortgage agent, a real estate broker, and a real estate developer out of Toronto, Canada, and I'm currently developing in three pockets in Windsor.
What's this project are we going to be talking about today?
Okay, the project we're talking about is on Windsor and Tuscarora. I just recently purchased a block, which is 6 properties and 6 lots. It has 5 residential properties and 1 commercial property that's 5,800 square feet.
How do you find something like this? Like, were they all being sold individually? Was it all as like a bundle? Did you make a bundle? Like, how did that work?
Okay, so this situation was one of my agents that's part of my brokerage. He found the deal. He gave me a shout and he's like, "Hey, Bello, I got this deal." I did my due diligence, placed an offer the same day because I saw the value in it and I knew that it wasn't going to stay on the market. I got the sign back and then I'm like, okay, I know that they have interest. It's not a multiple offer situation. I got to go. So I jumped in my car, went up at 5 a.m. I was in Windsor for 8 a.m. Did my inspection. I brought my crew to get a gauge of how much it would cost to do the renovations, and then boom, dropped the deposit the next day.
What is something like this like listed at? Like, what was it listed at? Where did you get it from?
Okay, so basically, typically, I bought this property for 1.5 million. It was listed at 1.5 million, but was grossly undervalued. It was, in my estimation, thought it'd be worth roughly 2.3 to 2.4 million, because each of the homes were worth roughly 400 to 420,000, and there was 5 homes. The commercial property was worth 5 to 600,000, and when you add that up, it's over 2.5 million. So I was like, even if the houses need a little bit of renovations here and there, I knew that there was a lot of value and a lot of potential for an upswing. So I threw the money in, jumped on the opportunity, and then I requested for my due diligence. So I gave myself some time to confirm my numbers, because we always think we know and we think we're at the cusp, but we need to talk to the professionals, and the appraisers are the professionals. So I got an appraiser to look at the site, and it got appraised at 2.3 million as is, without any renovations. The appraisal finished value was closer to 3 million. So I got to put in roughly 200,000 of rehab into it, and then we'll be able to sell close to $3 million.
What did the plan kind of start out when you first got it under contract? In between then and closing, like, how did that kind of change and how did that kind of evolve?
Oh man, this was a really complicated deal. The owner's from Florida, and she owns the property, but she's not involved. She had vagrants in and out of the houses. She had to board up some of the houses. She has a lot of deferred maintenance on the property, so you could tell that she's not really involved. That's why the prices were so cheap. And in turn, for her, she just wanted a quick flip. She just wanted to sell it. She wasn't really involved in the sale. Once she later found out the value, she wanted to chop me from my legs and not have me close. So her aim after us firming up the deal was, how do I get this guy's deposit and put it on the market for the actual market value? So I had a deposit initially of 100 grand. And in the agreement, when I first put the agreement together, it said that it'd be a $50,000 deposit on signing and a $50,000 deposit after I firmed my due diligence. What she did is she changed it to a $100,000 deposit, and I crossed out the 50,000 deposit on due diligence. She put it back and signed back, so I didn't know. So when I saw the sign back, I said 100,000. Okay, we're still at 1.5 million. I got my dates. All my conditions are good, and I just moved on. But I didn't realize that she added an extra 50,000 for the deposit. So now after I put through my due diligence, she's like, you need another 50 grand. And the problem was that I already had committed funds to the lender. So now the lender is telling me, hey, I need 20%. So I gave him 100,000. I gave 100,000 to her. I had to give the lender 200 grand. So now I had to come up with an extra 50. That was above and beyond what I had already gave to the lender. So now I had to come up with an extra 50 grand. So I gave it to her. And then the first closing was supposed to be June 21st. I was trying to sell pieces before I closed to reduce the amount of equity I had to come up with, and everybody flopped. So it got pushed to June 31st. And then from June 31st, I'm like, okay, now the lady's like, okay, I want an extra $25,000 deposit. I'm like, you got 150 grand. I'm not going to run away from 150 grand. You know, I bought it $800,000 below market. I'm motivated to close. She's like, I want another 25 grand. And I don't care. So I had to give her an extra 25,000 of deposit. And then on top of that, now she added an extra 5 grand to the price. So I'm like, okay, whatever. 5 grand in the long scheme of things is nothing, but it was out of my working capital, right? So now I'm trying to set up everything so I can literally go. The moment that we close, I can go on the vacant properties, and I'm giving notice to tenants, and I'm structuring their exit so I can actually get the property. I can start renovating. So now I'm talking to my contractor. I give my contractor a deposit, and homegirl wants me to come up with another 25 grand. Now, coming up with 25 grand is not that big of a deal, but coming up with 25 grand in 2 days, creates a little bit of an issue. So now I'm working with her, and she just wants more deposits, but the deposits don't increase the purchase price. The purchase price still stays the same. So she's still getting the same amount of money at the end of the day. She's just taking from my actual cash. So now I do that. I give some money to my contractor. I'm like, okay, I need you to start on this day, because when it comes to contractors, customer service and integrity is not a given. They know they're in demand, and they just act however they want to, right? So some people will promise you that they're going to show up, and they don't. Some people say that it'll cost you this, and suddenly your bill's 3 times that. And some people just leave the job because they found a better job. So for me, I wanted to secure somebody who I felt confident with, and I wanted to make sure he had the bandwidth and the space to be able to do the renovations. So I gave him a deposit. I'm like, okay, we're going to be go time first week of July. So now I give him money, and then now we get another extension. And I'm like, oh my God. One of my friends, Fahad, the guy who actually introduced me to the property, he was supposed to close, and I gave him one of the units for 80 grand. So that was supposed to be 80 grand off of what I needed to come up with. He wasn't able to close on time. So now we have to push again. So now I go to the lady, and she's like, you got to pay my lawyer fee. You have to pay my insurance. You have to do this. So now I go get insurance, and the damn insurance for the builder's risk was $22,000. My lender's like, I want you to pay that up front. I'm like, if I'm paying the insurance, if I pay first and last month for the insurance and I continue to pay it, what's the difference? This is going to be only a 4 to 5 month project. And the lender's like, I want you to pay 1 year upfront. So now I got to come up with another 22 grand. And I'm just like, geez.
So where does someone come up with all this? Like, where do you just pull it out of your ass? And where do you get? Because it seemed like first it was 50, then it was 75, then it was an extra 5 on the price, call it 80, right? And then you have 22 grand for the instruction. Then closing gets pushed back to another 25 racks. So this was 230.
This was fast and furious, man. I put in the offer on the 13th. I was supposed to close on the 21st. So it was 1 month. I had to find funding, come up with a deposit. I had to do all of that. And that's not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem was the lender decided to lend not against the value of the property, the appraised value. He wanted to lend against the purchase price. So now he wants 65% of the purchase price. So instead of me now having to come up with only, let's say I was only supposed to come up with 20% of 1.5 million less the equity that was already there, right? Because it was valued at 2.3 million. They're like, nope, we want 20% of the purchase price. So now I got to come up with an extra 90 grand I wasn't expecting. So at the time that I'm trying to come up with the extra 22, I actually had to come up with 130 grand in 4 days. So now I'm like, geez. So the thing is, luckily, I have goodwill from a number of my investors. And basically, investors are just clients, people who I've sold houses to, and we've made good decisions, and they've made a lot of money with me. So when I tell them, hey, giddy up, let's go, they're ready to go. One of the things with me is that I'm sparing with taking money, because unless I have a predetermined time that the project's supposed to be finished and I know my exact exit, I don't want to commit anything to anybody. So I'm like, okay, this is a new project. If I'm going to take on an investor, it's going to cost a lot, because it's not private money. It's not a private lender. This is a guy who just wants to make a flip. So a private lender is going to charge me 10%, whereas these investors are asking for 20 or 30% on their money. So I borrow 120 grand, and that 120 grand is going to cost me roughly 40 G's. It's only a 6-month timeline. Now, because there's close to $1 million in upside, I'm able to absorb that 40 G's. So anyways, I had to call one of my guys, and he was salivating over this deal. He's like, yo, can I just buy one of these properties and renovate it with you? I'm like, man, how about you just give me 120 G's and I give you 40 G's and you don't have to worry about nothing. And he's like, you know what? All right, I'll take it. So I got him in, I started him at 20%, and he's like, yo, I want 30. He's like, I got to come up with this bread this quick. He's like, I want 30. I'm like, he's like, you sure you can't do 35? Can I give you 150 G's? I'm like, I don't need an extra 30 G's. I don't want any more money. So long story short, I got the money and we were able to close after the third extension. It was stressful, man. This lady had $265,000 in her hand of my money. And she's like, if you don't close on Tuesday, I'm taking your deposit and I'm putting it on the market for 2.3. It's just savage. We got everything done. We had check in hand, but we weren't able to deposit the funds into her account on Tuesday. So my heart's like, I'm calling my lawyer. He's like, check's in the mail. Don't worry about it. We have funds. We showed them proof of funds. It's all, I'm like, this is all legal jargon to me. I just want to make sure she's not going to take me, right? Like, don't cut me from my knees. Like, I have everything structured. I got my guys ready to go. I came up with everything that the lender wanted. I did my part. I'm like, come on. So now the lawyer did actually come through and we were able to close. They showed proof of funds and then the money was in her account the following day. So we closed on the Wednesday instead of the Tuesday, but we had funds on Tuesday. So I was, let's just say I was a little anxious, just sweating a little bit. But the project, by God's grace, the project was, we were able to come through and we were able to close, and we're on to the next thing, which is demo.
So what's the overall plan? Let's not dive into the demo.
Yeah.
That's what we're ordered for. So what's the overall plan and how did it evolve? So what did it start as? Were you gonna flip the whole thing?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the overall plan was I'm building a 54 unit condo building, and this was basically a cash flow. This is supposed to be a quick flip for me to gain more cash flow. So I was hoping that with this project, I'd make between $800 and $1 million. And then I would take that 800 to $1 million and put it on to my condo project. So this was supposed to be a flip. I was just supposed to renovate the houses, sell them, and move on and sell the pieces of land. But now I start to see that land is scarce in Windsor, and all of the people who want the land want a house so they can attach it to the house and do triplexes and sixplexes and so on. And I'm just thinking to myself, I don't want to be in this project longer than 6 months. I want to be able to exit and use the cash flow for my other project. But the numbers were so juicy. I was just like, yo, I can't let this go. So I talked to my contractor and he's like, my fear was I didn't want to go through the planning process. I didn't want to do zoning. I didn't want to do site plan approval and basically build a new build. So I'm like, okay, how do we build this, structure it so that we're able to still close within 6 months, but be able to build a sixplex and get that upside. So what we did is we realized that so long as we keep the foundation and we tie off of the other house, we're able to, it's considered a renovation. Now, what happens with properties is that when you have two properties side by side with the same owner, the land title merges. So the two properties become one. So now instead of having two 50-foot lots, now I got a 100-foot lot by 150. And that 100-foot lot, I'm doing an addition. I'm expanding. This addition just so happens to be a fourplex, right? So now I apply, I do that, boom, it's a renovation, and I don't go through 1 to 2 years of planning. It's just quick and dirty. So we're able to optimize on the sale price. We're able to optimize on being able to actually build and get more out of the land. There are a couple houses. 3 of the houses are just going to be flips. The commercial is just going to be a flip. And then 2 of the houses are going to be turned into one into an 8-plex and the other one into a 6-plex. That's basically the overview of the Windsor-Tuscarora Avenue project. I don't know if we should call it Windsor or if we should call it Tuscarora. I don't know. You guys tell me, give me your feedback and tell me what you think sounds better. I don't want to talk too much. I actually want to get to action. Okay. I got to wrap up, but next video, I'm going to show you a little bit of the demo, a little bit of the progress of the project. Maybe I'll show you a little bit of the Southwood Lakes project. But thank you. Stay tuned, and we'll be in touch. Bello out.